Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was posted by a user named HFJ in the True Off My Chest subreddit. The post is titled, "I blew up my marriage believing my husband cheated when he didn't. Cheating is something that I have always had strong opinions about. I have been cheated on before and it sucked. Everyone knows that I don't forgive cheaters. So when my sister-in-law staged an elaborate scheme about my husband cheating, I ended the relationship. My relationship, unfortunately, wasn't the only one that was affected. My sister-in-law Lisa, her best friend Emma, and my husband Jamie were best friends growing up. Emma got married early when she was 20. Her husband was abusive. She has 2 children with him. She got divorced 10 years later and was finally free from his abuse. She suffered a lot and was in therapy, her and her children. I met Jamie 4 years ago. We got married 2 years later. Everything was just awesome. What I didn't know was that Emma wanted Jamie, and Lisa made it her mission when Emma finally got divorced to bring her brother and best friend together. I didn't know any of this, so I never knew there was a hidden agenda when a few months into my marriage, I overheard Lisa talking about how Jamie was cheating with a married colleague of his. In hindsight, I can tell it was staged because she was saying unnecessary details and was very loud. She meant for me to hear it. I confronted her then and there, and she played very flustered and apologized. She begged me not to ruin my marriage. She told me Jamie loved me and she never wanted to lose me as a sister, but at the same time, she provided me with pictures and texts that were all photoshopped of my husband and his colleague. She begged me not to mention where I'd found out, and I was grateful for her support and promised her not to expose her as the source. I confronted my husband with everything and he adamantly refused to admit to anything. It hurt me more that he never admitted nor apologized, ever. He asked me where I got this information, but I kept my promise and told him it was an anonymous tip. I also went so far as to contact the colleague's husband. At the time, I thought it was the right thing to do. The colleague is this very beautiful woman that my husband worked very closely with many hours a day. I was a bit jealous of that and confided my fears with Lisa. She used it against me. I asked for a divorce and the colleague's husband did too. After that, Lisa, who I thought was my friend, who called me her sister, disappeared from my life. Like I never existed. Even when I bumped into her, she was short with me and indifferent. Months went by and I was still heartbroken, processing the separation. My husband stopped trying to make me see reason and agreed to divorce. He said he wanted to move on. I started having doubts. Why was Lisa doing this now? She was my friend and wanted the best for me, yet now she didn't even answer my texts. I follow both her and Emma on Instagram and started seeing how Emma and my husband gradually started hanging out. At least once a week, Emma or Lisa shared stories about my husband with Emma and her children. What I did next is very questionable, and yet I don't regret it at all. I was desperate and needed the truth. I was still very good friends with Lisa's on-again, off-again boyfriend Mike's sister. I told her my doubts and everything. I told her that Lisa was my source, that my husband was cheating, and that I was starting to doubt everything and needed their help to unearth the truth. Mike was easier to persuade to help me than I expected. He had Lisa's passcodes and went through her messages with Emma. And there was everything. They had plotted every detail. They used my idiocy and insecurity and made me throw away the best thing that had ever happened to me. He sent me all the proof I needed, even the original photos they used to Photoshop my husband with his colleague. My world was turned upside down again and I went down a deeper depression. I stayed in bed, called in sick for 2 weeks. I had not only ruined my life, but also another family. I don't know why I'm writing here, whether I want advice or just to vent. I don't blame anyone but my own stupidity for ruining my marriage. I should have trusted my husband and the love he's shown me. I should have been honest with him about everything and where I got the news that he was cheating from. I should have not gone to hurt the colleague and her family just because I thought her beautiful. She has since quit her job and moved, but I still had her husband's contact information. I had to at least apologize. We met and I told him everything. He was so angry with me. He was crying and yelling at me, and all I could think was that I deserved every insult he threw my way. I found the colleague on Instagram and messaged her everything and a long apology. She didn't answer me. I don't know if I should tell my husband too. I know I don't deserve him at all. And I know that he doesn't want me anymore, but maybe he should just know what Emma is doing and what she's capable of doing. He deserves to know the truth. Maybe I could start with reassuring him that I'm not trying to win him back. I'm just trying to help him understand. And apologize. I need to apologize for everything. I don't know. Update. I have an update. Thank you for being so supportive. I honestly didn't expect that, given how long and boring my story was. I remember being so desperate and wanting to tell everything from the beginning and put it out there, maybe to try and make excuses for myself and for what I did. I appreciate that you wanted to help. I decided not to meet up with Jamie. Every time I tried to text him and ask for a meeting, I panicked. That wasn't a good sign at all. I wanted him to know everything in detail, but I tend to be all over the place when I'm panicking, so I decided to email him instead. I made a lot of drafts, cross-checked all the information, and waited a whole day before sending it, adding some details here and there that I had forgotten to include. I sent him all the manipulated pictures and the originals, along with every screenshot Mike sent me from Lisa and Emma's conversations. I made it clear, however, that I wasn't trying to manipulate him into taking me back because I knew that what I did was unforgivable. I wanted to warn him about who he was dealing with. I told him that I had been watching Emma and Lisa's Instagram and had seen that he was getting cozier with Emma. I wanted him to know all the facts if he was dating her. Just the thought of him dating Emma, I can't. I texted him that I had sent him an important email. He didn't answer me. On Wednesday, when I came back from work, Lisa, Emma, and Emma's 2 children were waiting for me outside my building. When I let them in, stupid me, Lisa started yelling and threatening me. She told me to call Jamie and Mike to tell them that I had made up all of this because I'm a pathetic loser. She warned me that I didn't want her as an enemy because she would make my life miserable. Believe me, you don't want me to make destroying your already miserable life my mission. Emma just smiled the whole time. She later said that my husband always had a crush on her and that he wouldn't believe my nonsense because he could finally be with her. The thing is, it felt like Lisa was more angry that Mike knew what she did rather than about her brother knowing. She really was annoyed with Emma and told her to shut up all the time. I couldn't get them out of my apartment, so I just left and called Jamie. I told him that they were at my place and that I couldn't get them out. 15 minutes later, I saw them leave. Jamie then texted that he wanted to come over if I was alright with it. He told me that he was very hurt that I would doubt him like this and believe rumors. I told him everything again without panicking. I explained that I loved and trusted Lisa, she was like my sister. I asked him to put himself in my shoes. If he happened to hear Lisa talk about me being unfaithful, would he have any doubts about his loving sister's intentions? He stayed the night and left the next morning. We have been texting several times a day and talking on the phone and FaceTime every night since then. He says that he loves me but doesn't know what to do. He is very hurt by his sister and Emma, of course, but even by me. He hasn't talked about canceling the divorce process yet. I'll just have to wait, which is understandable. I've turned his life upside down twice in such a short period. On a happier note, my husband's colleague and her husband are back together. My husband met with them and apologized. I've already told them everything, but my husband felt the need to apologize personally. Mike has ended it with Lisa. Lisa and Emma's relationship is very strained now. Both have blocked me from Instagram, of course, but apparently Lisa is blaming Emma for Mike leaving her, while Emma has tried to throw Lisa under the bus by telling Jamie she was innocent in all of this. I really hope my husband forgives me, and I promise that I will make it up to him and love him. This happens too much on Reddit. I firmly believe that partners should trust each other over their friends 9 times out of 10. Of course, it's fine to feel somewhat uneasy when you hear things like this coming from your friends and family. However, jumping to conclusions and acting the way OP did is childish. That being said, the true in all of this is obviously OP's friend for orchestrating this plot. I don't blame OP's husband if he doesn't want to reconcile, since not having the full trust of your wife is definitely a big hit. User Bored German said, I understand that he was upset, but man, photos and texts and actual evidence are just really difficult to immediately discard. I hope if this is real that everything works out. User Grumpy G said, hope they find their way back together. To be fair, she even had pictures and a history with cheaters. Not everyone knows about the wonders Photoshop can do. I was surprised to see how much you can change and manipulate nowadays. The sister-in-law knew how to push the right buttons. This is the latest in a string of disagreements that we've recently begun to have regarding our son as he enters his teen years. I met my wife in youth group before eventually getting married years later, but she's been the stricter one between us. While I believe in being strict to a point, I think there are times when she's been unreasonably strict. Times when I've had to step in and put my foot down. I remember when our son asked to skip youth group on a Friday to go to a friend's birthday party, but she said no because God is supposed to come first. While I understand that, I told her she was being unreasonable and that missing an occasional Friday wouldn't hurt. A similar conversation took place on one of his birthdays when he wanted to sleep in, but she wanted him to come. I again told her that it wasn't a big deal, and although he was allowed to stay home in the end, she was upset in the car and most of the time at church. In addition to this, she doesn't want him to have friends who aren't Christians, and that was one of the bigger arguments we had. When I asked her why she felt that way, she pointed to many mistakes she made after drifting from God after graduating high school and thinking that she didn't need him. She said she was trying to help him avoid making the same mistakes. I told her that while I understood where she was coming from, forcing him to do or go to something he doesn't want to will not help him long term and will only make him resentful later on. But she's convinced that he'll turn to drinking and other things like she did, often saying those memories stick with her to the point where she doesn't want him ever having to live through her mistakes. The reason I'm writing this is because of our latest argument. She wants him to quit gymnastics because she thinks that being around a bunch of girls in tights is unhealthy, along with how God wants us to shield our eyes from things that could distract us from him. She also says the sport provides many easy opportunities for him to become lustful in an environment that seems completely normal. I already knew that trying to talk her out of this would be almost pointless, but I tried nonetheless. I told her that while she can think whatever she wants, it doesn't mean that others will think the same way. I also told her there's nothing immoral about doing gymnastics, especially since he's passionate about it, but she said she didn't want him around an environment that often harbored girls of different ages and that the last thing she wanted was for him to start looking at younger girls. This is where I snapped and told her that while I supported her desire to talk to him about purity, she was wrong for putting her religious bias into everything and assuming the worst for our son. I also told her she was wrong for assuming our son would think like that and for viewing gymnastics in such a negative light. She then told me that she'll no longer drive him or allow him to go at the end of his current class. I told her she's wrong and constantly over the top about everything, presenting a distorted example of Christianity to him. I went to bed since I had work in the morning, but the conversation took place right before I was heading to bed. She wanted to talk first. When I went to work today, my son called me and told me what she said, that she had told him this would be his last semester in gymnastics and that it is her duty to protect him while he lives under our roof. When I came home today, I wanted to talk to her over dinner. I told my son he could take his food upstairs, but she insisted we were going to eat at the table. After we were done eating, she said her decision was final since she's the one who has to drive him in the first place. When I tried to talk to her, she didn't want to hear it. Eventually, I told my son that I would talk to her and not to worry about anything. He looked a bit better after I said that, probably because he knew I usually sided with him, but I'm slightly torn on this one. She's the one who drives him, and she's the only one who can while I'm at work. I'm considering asking someone else to carpool him, but I'm disgusted by the fact that I even have to do that. My main issue is how she doesn't want him to continue after this semester. I'm considering using my own money to pay for it myself. However, since our finances are combined, I know she'll throw a fit about it, and there's still the issue of how he's getting there. I'm open to any advice on how to make this work. I believe she's wrong and that he shouldn't have to quit just because of her assumptions, but I also know that the real issue lies within our marriage. I've suggested counseling to her, but she refuses to go. So I went by myself for a while, which did some good. I want things to work out between us. I understand she's been through a lot, which is why she's so adamant about him staying close to God. However, I disagree with how she's going about it and am questioning whether I'll ever be able to fully get through to her. User Because Fun said, ironically, I think your wife is creating the very environment that causes people to leave the church once they're on their own. This sounds like religious trauma in the making. A deleted user said, wow, your wife seems very controlling. I can understand where she's coming from. She's had bad experiences that she doesn't want your son to endure. But that is part of life. He has to struggle with things at some point or he'll end up in the real world not knowing what to do or how to cope. She can't shield him from everything scary forever. On the topic of the gymnastics thing specifically, I don't know your son, but you do. Is he the type to lust after girls? Based on your description, it sounds like he isn't that kind of boy. Men and boys aren't animals purely driven by sexual desire. There's such a thing as self-control, and self-control starts with good values, which, like I said, sounds like your son has. If he knows his values, chances are he won't lust after the girls in his gymnastics class. User life is pass, fail said, your wife is creating an angry adult who will resent all the grief she's causing him. He won't be some slick-suited Christian leading a chorus on Sunday morning. He'll be an angry young man who doesn't tell his mother anything about his life so he can bulletproof himself from her. I know because I lived it. My mother interfered with my interest because of religion and it hurt my life. My uncle introduced me to martial arts when I was 8. I loved it, and it was good for me both mentally and physically. By 12, I started being invited to the adult class. I was good at it, but then my mother rediscovered her Southern Baptist judgmentalism, and I wasn't allowed to go anymore because there was a startling 2-minute meditation opening and closing the classes. Karate was a good example, but there were many things. She filtered all new information through this religious fear filter and was always hassling me over benign and ordinary rites of passage that every young person goes through. It was a frustrating childhood, and rather than being supported, she just made it harder. I couldn't talk to her about anything. You need to warn her about what she's doing because in her effort to protect her son from the world, she may make it harder for him to learn how to deal with that world. Parenthood is future adult training, and avoidance is a poor counterfeit for confidence. Update. It's been a couple of days since my original post, so I'll get right into it. The short version of last time was that my wife wanted my son to quit gymnastics because she thinks that being around other girls in gymnastics apparel would cause him to lust and be ungodly. This is in the aftermath of her talking to him about purity and whatnot. Over the years, I've been too passive about her ways. When she guilted him into wanting to skip a single youth group meeting to go to a birthday party, it was all under the impression that God is supposed to come first in everything. She also doesn't want him having friends who aren't Christian because she thinks that will push him further away from God. I consider this a contradiction to the Great Commission in the New Testament. Not that I'm someone who advocates trying to bring religion into every conversation or comes off as that weird person, but Jesus spent the majority of his time around people who weren't perfect saints, which is the opposite of what she's mandated. When she tried to force him to skip the party to put God first, I overruled her, taking the easy way out. When he wanted to hang out with friends who weren't necessarily Christians and she threw a fit, I wanted to tell her that that's a form of prejudice, judging someone based on an imaginary image in our heads that has nothing to do with their actual character and before even meeting them. But I took the easy way again and just told him he was fine to keep those friends, even though I believe that shouldn't have been an issue in the first place. I did the same thing regarding the purity talks she wanted to have with him. I agreed and let her have them, although I was rather quiet during those talks. Now I regret that and realize just how much of a mistake it was for these reasons. Being completely honest, this whole situation that has been brewing for years has made me grow tired of her religious nonsense and somewhat of religion as a whole, since it can sometimes become a scapegoat for petty beliefs that people want to promote under the guise of something noble. I think it's very manipulative. For years, I did nothing because the thought of separation and the opinions that would follow from our church, parents, and friends would be overwhelming, considering how some really consider it taboo to get divorced, even if it's none of their business. But to be honest, I don't really care anymore. I've been growing more numb to religion over the past few years because of her, and after hearing her suggest that our son would look at girls in an environment he's grown up around for years in a lustful way, it just doesn't sit well with me, and that's putting it nicely. She's sexualizing a sport and suggested that our son could become a predator if he stayed, which has resonated more than anything else she's ever done. It also makes me wonder if she doesn't have that kind of mindset herself already. So what did I do? Before doing anything, I decided to talk to her one-on-one about the matter. I asked if she had anything against gymnastics personally, and I told her that trying to make him quit would only make him hate us. She replied with something along the lines of how the world has a habit of making everything that isn't sexual, and that the gymnastics environment promotes girls in clothing that can be easily looked at wrongfully. She then went on to say things about how God wants us to have clean eyes and similar sentiments. When I suggested that perhaps she was projecting her personal problems onto him, which I debated whether it would be too harsh to say, but chose to do anyway, she just said no and didn't want to talk about it. I eventually asked if she'd be willing to go to counseling with me, a professional counselor we could find in the area. She said no. Then I offered to talk to someone inside the church as a second option, but she became defensive and said that I was trying to embarrass her in front of her friends. I told her that wasn't true and that she wasn't cooperating when a marriage is supposed to be about working things out. She then got upset and said that I'm wrong for allowing our son to stay in an environment where he'll grow older as younger girls keep coming in, and that it says a lot about what I'm comfortable looking at by allowing him to do so. At that point, I was done because I felt she was accusing me of being unfaithful simply because I don't think he should quit gymnastics. Sure, I could talk to other parents and try to arrange a carpool, and I could drive him myself if I could get off early enough from work on some days, but I can't control what she does at home when I'm not there. She has already talked to him behind my back on numerous occasions while I'm at work, trying to explain why she wants him to quit and whatnot. If she doesn't want to talk or cooperate with me, then what more can I do? I talked to my son and told him that we'd be going up to my parents for the weekend and potentially a bit longer. I was direct in telling him why. I reiterated that I'm on his side and that she is sexualizing a sport and minors in a way that is very inappropriate. The last thing we need is to deal with that as he goes into his teen years. I also apologize for enabling her for so many years while being afraid of the idea of separation. While I heavily debated whether or not I should be this direct about explaining everything at his age, I chose to do so because I didn't want him to feel like I kept things from him as he grew older throughout this situation. I also told him how it was making me stressed at work and unable to focus on my job, which allowed him to open up and tell me that he feels guilty about wanting to go. I told him that's wrong and that he has nothing to feel guilty about. The fact that she made him even have these doubts is something that didn't need to exist in the first place. My parents are helping me look into a lawyer and other ways to support him. A lot of this is on me for allowing it to go on for too long, but I just want to know how to help him with the guilt he voiced in the aftermath of her words. Besides telling him that I'm on his side and that she's wrong, she's already implanted doubt whenever he's in the gym now, and I just want to help him navigate it as best as I can and undo the damage her behavior has caused. As for my wife, she didn't know we left until after we got there, but I told her exactly why we had left, and she was slightly apologetic on the phone. I asked her again if she'd be willing to go to counseling, but she accused me of trying to manipulate her into going, so I told her to call back if she had a change of heart. My main priority remains undoing the damage she's done to our son while recovering mentally myself and potentially working through a separation unless she shows she's willing to change, which I have my doubts about considering we left and she still wouldn't consider counseling. Just being up here is more peaceful and needed after the stress of work and being in that home. Final update, it's been almost a month, so I wanted to come back to this. I'm not going to lie, I'm really tired at this point. I wrote a lot the last 2 times, but I don't think I will this time because I'm really losing my energy about it. Basically, when we were still staying at my parents', I told her why we left and that I'd return if she had a change of heart when we first talked. However, she refused to budge on her stance that it is inappropriate for him at his age to be in the same gym as little kids, preferably girls from a purity standpoint. She believes that the world has a habit of turning everything that isn't sexual into something sexual, and she thinks that the sport just serves as eye candy for lustful people who can watch girls run around in leotards, as she often points out. She's told him this nonsense while I'm at work, and it drives me crazy. I couldn't focus knowing that she's at home telling him things I'll have to undo later. I've stated in my updates that a lot of her behavior is on me for being lax over the years, but I'm trying to do better. It's been really stressful, and it still is almost a month later. While we were at my parents', she began telling her parents and mutual friends false things about me to the point where her parents and some of them started calling or messaging me on her behalf, calling me a bad husband along with other things. Apparently, she told them that I kidnapped our son and made other claims about how I'm this horrible person because of her lies, not to mention something about me putting my hands on her, which I swear never happened at any point in our lives or even when we were talking about going to counseling. My parents told me that she was trying to guilt me into returning under her terms and that I should continue to stay with them because she has truly gone off the rails. We've been here ever since, but I've taken a leave from work because my mind hasn't been in a good place for over a month due to everything that happened at our house. The new lies, the stress my son feels, and finding a lawyer while researching other legal matters with my parents. It's taken a lot of time out of my parents' lives too, but they've been amazing, and I want to thank them when it's all over, and even before then. From talking to the police and organizing documentation for them and my lawyer, I'm tired right now, and my parents are too. We're still trying to figure it out and know that this will probably be a long process. I don't care how much it costs to debunk her lies and get us both into therapy. My son, however, however, does not want to go. I told him alongside my parents that he could go with me or alone only if he wanted to and that we weren't forcing him. He said he didn't want to at the time, so we've left it for now instead of forcing the issue. I've begun talking to a therapist in my spare time online as well, and my parents are helping me pay for it a little. However, my son doesn't want to do gymnastics anymore, and he's still hard on himself for everything that's transpired, despite the many times my parents and I have tried to assure him that nothing is his fault. All of it is mine for letting her go down this slippery slope for so long. He's had no desire to continue and has voiced guilt about being around girls and making them uncomfortable without even knowing he was doing so. I told him that was his mom putting that in his head and that it isn't true. I regret going along with her desire to teach purity and keeping us in a church that ostracizes people for having an abortion. Like one girl I mentioned in my second update, the same church where she has spread her lies about me. I have no intention of ever returning there again. In regard to his schooling, that's another mess at the moment. He hasn't been in class because she went to the school too, and my lawyer thinks it's best to hold off on that for now for his well-being and the fact that she could show up there herself. However, he wants him to go back sooner rather than later, and I do too. I'm trying to see if there's a way he can do most of his work online or something, but I'm still working on that at the moment. Most importantly, I'm trying to encourage him to speak to someone about how he feels, something far beyond what I'm able to help him with from a professional standpoint, and I'm standing by him until he decides to pursue anything else. From a mental standpoint, he feels guilty, not just for what happened with his mom, but also about the things she said to him regarding him lusting after girls without him even knowing it at gymnastics. I don't want him to develop a complex over her nonsense. My other main priority is getting a divorce after this last straw. I can't take it anymore, and I don't know how much longer this will continue. Probably a while. He's tired of gymnastics and not in a good state right now. My parents think it's best for him to see someone sooner rather than later, which is why I'm likely going to make him go at some point. However, I don't know the best way to approach that without coming off as forceful in a way that he'll resent. If anyone has any advice on how to encourage him to go in a way that doesn't make him upset or unwilling to potentially help us with some of the legal issues she might have brought up with him, I'd really appreciate it. This hasn't been easy on him, and I just want it to be over. I'm aware that this is the consequence of letting her get away with small things over the years that have boiled into this situation, but if we can come out alright, then maybe we can both somehow be stronger at the end of it. This next post was made in the AITAH subreddit by a user named Axel Barillas. The post is titled, "My GF rejected my proposal because it didn't meet her expectations." For context, my girlfriend and I have been together for 6 years, and over Thanksgiving weekend, I took her on a week-long trip to Hawaii with the intention of proposing to her. I even asked her parents for their blessing and showed them the ring a couple of days before we left for the trip. We have talked about marriage before, and we've both agreed that we want to marry each other, so the idea is nothing new and actually a frequent topic. The issue is that she wanted a grand wedding proposal similar to the ones you might see on TikTok or Instagram. Big "marry me" letters on the beach, rose petals on the ground, lights, mariachi, etc. I was absolutely on board with doing that for her if it made her happy, but that was something to be planned at a beach back at home since I wouldn't have the resources to plan it for a trip to somewhere we'd never been. We booked everything as a last-minute vacation just 5 days prior, ironically after she sent me videos of people vacationing in Hawaii. I believed this would be a great opportunity though. I planned to propose to her on the day we arrived. I carried the ring in my pocket all day, waiting for a good opportunity to ask her. However, we had some completely unnecessary arguments, and I decided to postpone because I didn't want to propose after a bitter day. On the second day there, we had booked a reservation to go parasailing. I didn't want to risk losing the ring, so I left it back at the hotel. We didn't get back to the hotel until around 5 p.m. and we started getting ready to go out in the city. By this time, it was already starting to get dark. She had said before that she wanted a sunset proposal, and knowing that I couldn't organize any of the other things she had in mind for a proposal, the sunset was the only thing I had. I missed my chance on that, but we still went out to dinner and drinks. We came back to the hotel afterward because she was tired. I let her rest for a bit, and around 10:30 p.m. I convinced her to go on a night walk with me at the beach. This was when I planned to propose. We got to the beach, the city was very much still awake, and the lights of the buildings and streets combined with the bright moon illuminated the ocean beautifully. We stood there hugging and kissing, both knowing it was a beautiful and intimate moment. I started telling her how much I love her and how I want to be with her my entire life. As I started to get on one knee and reached into my pocket for the ring, she stopped me. "I hope you're not about to propose to me right now. This isn't what I expected." My heart dropped. I got back up and stood speechless before starting to walk back to the hotel. I was in no mood to talk about the situation and told her we should discuss it tomorrow. We talked about it the next day and she insisted that I do it again, but this time the right way during sunset. I told her I couldn't do that because she had already rejected me. She said she didn't reject me, she just felt it wasn't how she would have wanted it to happen. We spent the next 4 days in Hawaii in a very tense state, but had to deal with it until we got back home. We lived together, but for the first night after returning home, she went to sleep at her parents' house. Now she's back, but I don't want to be home with her there. What can be the outcome of this situation? I obviously didn't want this to happen during our vacation, but I can't see it any other way. Is this a valid reason for me not wanting to be with her anymore? I also don't think it's right for me to redo the proposal. Update. So, we had another conversation about it once she came back home from her parents. She's still adamant that I failed to meet her expectations. Admittedly, I understand I didn't do any of the things she had visualized. I want to emphasize that we're young, and the proposals she's seen on social media are nothing but trends. These proposals have become popular in maybe the last year or two. Prior to that, she told me she wanted an intimate proposal, especially away from the public eye. People are telling me I'm wrong because I knew exactly what she wanted and didn't do it. She also tells me that a proposal is solely about the female and what she wants. I think that's bullshit. I know I've told her that I was on board with doing her fantasy proposal, yet I changed my mind about that. I didn't want to plan this huge thing at my hometown beach just for the spectacle of it. I preferred to do it in a way that I knew we'd both enjoy, in Hawaii especially. Something that really bugs me is that she says I made the trip seem like just another trip, nothing crazy or out of the ordinary. This is literally our first ever vacation flight together. The same night that happened, we had brunch, went parasailing, and enjoyed a wonderful teppanyaki dinner. Am I selfish for changing the whole proposal without consulting her? I don't understand why some people say I'm selfish for not doing what she wanted. I still did something that objectively should make any woman ecstatic. My focus now is shifting from wondering if it's okay for me to break up with her for turning me down to wanting to break up because of her general ungratefulness. Another reason why she said it didn't meet her expectations was that we were both dressed casually. She wanted me to give her prior notice that something special was going to happen by telling her to get glammed up. Note, to those asking why I couldn't propose the next day at sunset, another requirement for her proposal was for her dog to be there, which she told me at the same moment after saying it wasn't what she expected. She absolutely adores this dog and has always told me she wants him to be the ring bearer at our wedding. Sure thing. If it makes her happy, I really don't mind. The issue is that she also wanted this to be the case for the proposal, which I was completely unaware of. She was just too focused on how she wanted the proposal rather than being excited about being with me. Update 2. We had the breakup talk. My girlfriend has always been a bit self-centered. I've known that and have been able to put up with it. About 4 months ago, she started having therapy sessions. I don't know how long they last, what days they are, or what they talk about. I do know that she has become an entirely different person. She's been more compassionate and cooperative with me. The things I've always wished for her to be more of, this has caused me to be fully ready to commit to a life with her, hoping this new mentality is permanent. Anyway, she talked to her therapist and told me that she asked her one question: do you like surprises? She tells her, of course, she does. She explains to her that as her boyfriend, I most likely know that and was trying to do something heartfelt and unscripted. No mariachi, glamorous dress, or big letters, just the two of us. She further tells her that if she truly felt in her heart that she wants to live a life with me, all of the other superficial stuff shouldn't matter. She's apologizing to me, telling me she really regrets doing that, and assuring me she would have said yes anyway. My biggest regret is I'll never really know what she would have said, though in my gut I'm not 100% sure she would have said yes. Her first thoughts when that was happening were completely dismissive of me and disrespectful, something that for once I feel like I can't take anymore. I'm standing my ground, telling her I've swallowed my pride way too many times in the past and we should go through with it. I'll be sleeping on the couch, she'll be packing her things tomorrow and going to live with her parents. User I am not that guy said, there's a chance you won't get past this. However, my first thought is that it foreshadows a very demanding partner. Does she have other unrealistic expectations about money, cars, vacations, clothes, etc.? Because those can be real detriments to living as partners together. User Rodent said, I'm very sorry, but this reminds me of several of my friends whose marriages and engagements broke down. She especially gives me the vibe of one friend's ex-wife, who went into a deep depression right after the wedding because, and I quote, she was living her biggest dream while planning the wedding, but now it was over. That was the point my friend realized she just wanted to be married, and it didn't matter who it was with. When the way the proposal is done is more important than the actual proposal for one person, that says a lot about that person's character and how they view the relationship. I suggest you move on to better people. User Potions to Pills said, my now husband proposed as soon as he had his hands on the ring. We ate a few slices of pizza at a park we'd never been to and couldn't find again if we had to. No connection to it at all prior to the aforementioned proposal. He got down on one knee and I thought he was tying his shoes. We had also been discussing marriage, so rather than saying, will you marry me, he said, let's make this official. No grand gesture, no planning. He had the ring. It was burning a hole in his pocket for the entire 2 hours he had it. I still said yes and married him, 15 years this year.